Hey, y'all. Welcome back. It is Wednesday, June 12th, and it's Dr. Sean Tassone, America's Holistic Gynecologist, author of the Hormone Balance Bible, and podcast host for Confessions of a Male Gynecologist. All of these things are places where I talk about women's health, especially hormones. Yes, I am. The last time I checked, I know this. I'm a man speaking in a woman's world, but I will tell you, I have a unique perspective in that sense as well. And I spend a lot of time listening. That's what I do. I listen to what women tell me. And one of the things that women tell me all the time is that their doctors say they don't need to test their hormones. And there's a various multitude of reasons why women are told not to check their hormones. One of the reasons I hear this all the time, the doctor says, well, why would we check hormones? They fluctuate so much. What that tells me is that they don't know crap about the menstrual cycle, because if they did know the hormones and how they fluctuate during the menstrual cycle, and they knew when you or where you were in your cycle, they could easily compare those to where you're supposed to be in your cycle. If you don't cycle, it makes it a little bit more difficult if you don't have a uterus or something. But at the same time, if you've done it 50,000 times like I have, you know what to expect. You know what to look for and what you should see, and you compare that with the symptoms that the patient is having. So let's just dive into this a little deeper. So first of all, if the hormones fluctuate, you've had a hysterectomy, I don't know what we're doing. Basically, that doctor is just flat out telling you they're not interested. They're not interested in dealing with hormones, because if they were, they would just order the damn labs. Here's the thing. If they didn't order labs to check to see if you were in menopause, and there are some indicators that would tell us you're in menopause, by definition, if they didn't do labs, you would have to wait for 12 months with no period in order to qualify for menopause. Now, that could be 12 months of sheer suffering, hot flashes, mood swings, vaginal dryness, before they would diagnose you with menopause, which is horrendous to think that. But if they did labs, they could tell you FSH and LH are above 40, estrogen 0, progesterone 0. Combine that with your symptoms, you're in menopause. You don't have to wait 12 months. But the underlying reason, and this is what they don't talk about, the underlying reason for not doing labs is really because they just don't want to. One, because they just don't want to do it, because then they got to deal with the answers that they don't have. And two, they just don't want to be bothered. You see, in obstetrics and gynecology, delivering a baby probably makes, I'm going to make a guess here, but if I'm going off of basics, 60 times more money to have a patient deliver a baby than it would be to see somebody for their menopausal care. Sheer dollars. I mean, you don't get paid as much. And they can, sometimes dealing with hormones is a pain. You have to be persistent. You have to keep changing things. You have to listen to the patient, listen to their complaints. This didn't work. I want to go back to this. Oh, I changed my dose. People do all kinds of things, and you got to be willing to move and groove and do the things with them. If you're not wanting to do that because you've got 30 deliveries this month and you're going to make 100 grand doing that, where do you think they're going to spend their money or their time? And I mean, it's not a bad thing. That's human nature. The other things that I would say is when they have you on a medicine and you go in and you're like, I'd like to see where my levels are. I feel off. Oh, we don't have to check levels. We'll just go on your symptoms. The reason they tell you they don't have to check levels is because when the pharmaceutical companies went to the FDA, they had to do the lab testing. That's part of the deal. They had to show that their dosages were in safe ranges and whatnot. So technically, when you're on a patch, you may not need to have testing. However, there are 4 different dosages of an estrogen patch. 4. There are 2 prescription strengths for progesterone. So how would you know what dose would be good for you if you're just going based on symptoms? It may not be the telltale sign. I wouldn't go with just symptoms, and I wouldn't go just with labs. I go with both. Why wouldn't I get the most data that I could get on you? Why wouldn't I do that? And here's the other thing. When women are gaslighted and told that they don't need to order labs, you can order your own. I mean, you can go to any lab test now or Life Extension, and you can order your own set of labs. Hard to interpret them, but you can order them. And the problem is now there's health coaches and whatnot out there ordering labs and making diagnoses and practicing medicine. And I think that's wrong too. But it's because the doctors are failing. That's why the coaches are so busy, is because my colleagues won't do it. And so we should be doing it. You should get labs tested. And I'll tell you what, for me to order labs literally takes 30 seconds. It's not a big chunk out of my day to order you a lab panel. The electronic records anymore, you hit one button, it can order a set of labs, pre-programmed set of labs. I mean, it takes 10 seconds to click the button. So, and that's a lie too. When the doctor tells you the insurance won't pay for it, that's mostly a lie. In most cases, and I would say probably 90% of the cases, your insurance will indeed pay for the labs. Now, it might go towards your deductible, and that's the problem. Most people don't understand their insurance. They don't understand how deductibles work. If the labs are $2,000 and you have a $3,000 deductible, it might go towards your deductible. Now, if you know the cost ahead of time, and the labs should be telling you how much these things cost when you go. Patients of mine that say, like, don't have insurance, don't want to pay, because they have a big deductible, $349 for all the labs that I order. I mean, it's not cheap, but definitely cheaper than $2,000. So if you have questions, drop them in the chat. I like to answer those when I'm done at the end. But here's the thing. Overall, let's just put this back into perspective. When you go in, if you want your labs done, blood is great. Blood is covered by your insurance. Blood is accurate because it's in your blood. The results come back rather quickly, probably within 3 to 5 days. And you can definitely follow trends with blood. The downside to blood is that it only tells me about you while the needle's in your arm. So it's a very limited exam. You can check urine. Urine tests will check all kinds of things, all the sex hormones, all their metabolites, melatonin, cortisol. Urine will not test very well thyroid or vitamin D, so it's somewhat limited there. It's about $350 to do the test. It's a 24-hour test, so it gives you a bigger picture, but the results can take 3 to 4 weeks to come back. And if you're working with a Dutch test provider and they're charging you more than $350 for the test, then they're gouging you. Shouldn't cost that much. Or if they're saying it's $900 for the test and something else, that means they're charging you like $600 for their visit, which is also outrageous. So just keep that in mind. Saliva. Anybody that checks your saliva, you should see another provider. Saliva is not accurate. It's never been reproducible. It's simply just not an accurate test. It depends on what you ate, how soon you ate it. Everybody secretes hormones at different rates in their saliva. So it's just not an accurate test. So I wouldn't waste money. I would do blood, I would do urine, but I would never do saliva. I had a hysterectomy at 38. One ovary remained, cysts all over my ovary, and still after with the ovary, when the ovary remained, I'm now 58, and they told me I don't need hormones. Well, you're the one that knows if you're fine or not. I can't believe people tell you you're fine. How do they know you're fine? You're in there talking to them. You're not fine. So how can they say, oh, you're fine? Find another doctor. That's ridiculous. I think my estradiol patch was too strong because I had such a terrible cramping, had to take it off. I can't tell you if it's safe or not because I don't know you. You can always call my office and get a second opinion. 512-956-0296. I'm licensed in 27 states. Would love to help you if I can. Yes, I've been told tests don't matter. They go by symptoms. Should one get urine instead of blood? No, like I just said, I use blood probably 90% of the time, and I do just fine. And again, that's just them being lazy. They don't want to deal with the results. I went to an endo today. She didn't do any labs. I still have PCOS symptoms. I'm thin though. I asked about metformin. She won't give it on me. So that's endocrinologists can literally be the worst. They can literally be the worst humans on the planet. I don't know why, but they tend to be like very, very much in the gaslighting lane. First of all, you can't really diagnose somebody with PCOS unless you have labs. I mean, you really need to have the labs to diagnose them with that. Second, 25% of patients with PCOS are thin. So just because you're thin doesn't mean you have PCOS, doesn't mean you don't have PCOS. And number three, metformin would be prescribed, but if your hemoglobin A1C and your glucose were okay, you may not need it. If you can't get metformin because it's a prescription, you can try dihydroberberine. Dihydroberberine head-to-head against metformin, very similar results. And you can get that from a company called Endurance Products. Started progesterone 3 days ago, very tired. Yeah, if you're taking it in the morning, progesterone will make you tired. I always tell my patients to take it at bedtime. Thank you for changing women's medicine. I came across your name a decade ago researching Esher. Oh, thanks. Actually, they're writing a book about Esher. I'm meeting with the author tomorrow so we can further expose this horrible thing that happened to women years ago. Looking forward to our next appointment and continuing on the journey. Yes, keep in mind, I'm still actively seeing patients. I'm based out of Austin, Texas, but I am licensed in 27 states. I did a YouTube live on it a couple days ago where I talked about the states that I'm actually in. If you follow me on Instagram, my second pinned post is all the states where I'm licensed, so I can definitely see you. And I would say to you, the good place to start, the easy place to start is to go right now, head over to Amazon and get a copy of the Hormone Balance Bible. I talk about all this stuff. It's just in one place. I talk about testing, talk about each of the hormones individually. I talk about if they're too high or too low, and I put them into stories so that it makes it easier for you to understand. I tell the story of low testosterone. I tell the story of low thyroid, and you can see how you compare to those 40,000 women that have told me their stories. This is a culmination of me having all these women tell me their stories and looking and sitting there and going, yeah, some of these sound very similar, very similar storylines. So I just put them all together. So remember, thank you, Robin. That's very nice of you. Testing. You should test if you want to test. It's plain and simple. If your doctor won't test, find a new doctor, order the labs on your own. Estradiol, progesterone, free and total testosterone with a sex hormone binding globulin, DHEA, vitamin D, thyroid stimulating hormone, free T3, free T4, and at least thyroid peroxidase antibodies. That's a good place to start. You can add a hemoglobin A1C, comprehensive metabolic profile, CBC, fasting glucose. There's a lot of things you can add if you want. But the basics are the sex hormones. If you don't have insurance, probably somewhere between $300 and $500, depending on the lab you use. The Dutch test is a urine test. It doesn't check thyroid or vitamin D. So you're still going to need to do blood anyways, which is why I just do blood most of the time. And if the doctor's worth their weight, they should be able to manage you without using a Dutch. If there's no other questions, I'm going to end this one for today. Remember, you can find me on Instagram at SeanTassoneMD. You can listen to Confessions of a Male Gynecologist. I have a new episode dropping tomorrow. And you can buy the book, The Hormone Balance Bible, on Amazon for about $15 right now. Have a great day.